Well, now I'm supposed to be offering a 4-year report on the last 4 years of activity in ICMC. And I want to make the point that, first of all, I'm very unworthy to offer this report. I have been with ICMC, serving ICMC, for less than half of that time. But I do want to thank the staff and the volunteers of ICMC who have helped to formulate this report, but also who have been there through the heat of the day and have continued to serve, some of them for a very long period of time. I think that we have some slides. Okay, thank you, Juan. So, I want to begin really by thanking those who have gone before me, and especially, as Michelle mentioned earlier, our former president, Sir Peter Sutherland, a blessed memory. He became very ill the last couple of years, and he died just a few months ago. But he served not only ICMC, but he served the cause of migrants and refugees throughout the world for a very long time. And he was a strong and eloquent voice in this area. So I think that we really need to remember him at this time. I believe he's looking down at us and that he's very pleased with the work of ICMC, but also knowing Peter, I'm sure he's also quite anxious that we make sure we get it right in terms of the compacts and in terms of the implementation of those compacts. I also want to give special recognition to my immediate predecessor, Johan Kettelers, who served ICMC as Secretary General for 12 years. And all of the staff and the volunteers, both those in the past and those in the present, who work so hard with serving people who are migrants and refugees in all parts of the world, and we'll see how that plays out in the slides that you'll see. Finally, I want to thank the refugees and the migrants themselves. Pope Francis constantly reminds us that they are our teachers, not simply recipients of our services. And I can tell you from my own direct work with refugees and migrants, especially years ago in my home diocese in the United States, I served as the Director of Catholic Charities, but also as the Director of Diocesan Resettlement in that. And it was at a time when we had many large numbers coming to our diocese from Southeast Asia, the Vietnamese, the Cambodians, the Laotians. We also had large numbers coming from Cuba, the Marielito wave of refugees who came from Cuba, and also Eritreans, Ethiopians at that time as well. And then later, many new waves were coming as well. And I have to say that I learned much more from them than I gave to them. And I just thought of a few people that I wanted to single out who were important teachers to me. One time, very late at night, I was working in New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. I received a telephone call from the Boston Police Department. And one of the refugees that we had resettled, a Cuban, Marielito, was murdered in Boston. The only thing he had in his pocket was my name and my telephone number. And so the police reached out to me. I was certainly overcome by this sadness, by this tragedy. I also had to go and inform his pregnant sister that her brother had been murdered. And then I had to go and identify the body and claim that body and bring it back to New Jersey to be sure that the man had a decent burial and also that his sister was able to share her grief and pray for her brother during his burial. That taught me that we don't really understand how much the impact of our services have on people who are migrants and refugees, and sometimes have little hope beyond the relationship with us. And so it really helped me understand the importance of my work, even though there were many frustrations in that work on a day-by-day basis. I also think about the time in the 1980s, early 1980s, When I was asked to go as a diocesan resettlement director to Bataan in the Philippines, an ICMC program, and I could have never imagined that I would be standing up here before you today. And in fact, I want to thank Bishop Santos, because that camp in Bataan area is in his diocese. And when I went to visit him this summer, the first thing he did was take me to the camp to see it. It was like a pilgrimage for me, Bishop, and I'm very grateful. One night during my service there to help design cultural orientation education programs for the refugees, we had a kind of musical and dance presentation by the refugees. And there was a beautiful dance done by a young Cambodian girl. I was sitting next to one of the refugees. I didn't really know him. He was not in my classes, so I didn't get to know him well. But I commented on how beautifully this Cambodian girl was dancing. And it turned out he was her father. And he told me that he and his family had tried to escape from Cambodia. And everyone in the family, the wife and 5 of the other children, were killed. And he and his daughter were alone. And he was fully determined to be strong, to give a new life to his daughter. And they were on their way to be resettled in the United States. Again, the hope, the persistence, the courage, the force of people who are refugees and migrants is something we must remember and we must respect and we must learn from. So again, I want to thank those that I've been privileged to serve and that all those whom were privileged to serve as ICMC. I won't go into detail on this because I think you'll see some of these areas of activity and expertise. Thank you. So thanks, Juan. You'll see some of these areas in the different presentations that I make. I also want to say we have a limited period of time, so I will not read all that I prepared, but these slides will be up on our link that will give you with all of the documents. So if you look at the slides, plus if you display them as a notes page, the script is underneath too, if it's helpful to you. First, I want to start with church networking because, as Cardinal Parolin pointed out, this was our founding principle. Pope Pius XII asked us to develop a network of bishops' conferences, religious congregations that were serving refugees and migrants throughout the world, and other Catholic organizations. And I think we've tried to be faithful to that apostolic vocation. At the same time, I realize that we dedicate little resources to that because there are few resources that come to us for that. But I think the richness is among you. And the more you share with us, the more we'll be able to strengthen that networking that we have together. We shouldn't have to wait only once every 4 years for you to come together. The more you can share with us your experiences, the challenges you face, the good practices that you implement, we promise you that we will share it with others through our website and through some of the communications that we have, and also with our annual report. But for that, I need your help. So I just want to mention a few of the areas that we have been doing this already. Certainly through our website, as I mentioned, and when I talk more specifically about communications, I will share with you how we go about that. We also have 2 continental working groups, or one is a bicontinental working group. We have the Asia-Oceania Working Group, and that meets once a year. And I know Bishop Santos, who's now the president of that group, is also working hard to establish a secretariat for that group as well. And we're very grateful for that, Bishop. And also, we have a joint working group with SACOM, the Symposium of Episcopal Conferences of Africa and Madagascar, and ICMC Contacts in Africa. And we're glad that Father Komakoma, who's the Secretary General of SACOM, is here with us these days, and we hope that we could strengthen that relationship and do much more in that working group. And finally, we have a new endeavor, and that is a joint project on the future of work in the context of Laudato Si. And this is a program that we've received some generous funding from a Catholic foundation. And we'll have a special lunchtime after lunch at 2 o'clock for those of you who don't need to have a siesta. We'll have a special presentation on that by Father Pierre Martineau Lagarde, who is a counselor to the Director General at the International Labor Organization, and by our own Ignacio Alonso, who's staffing that project for us. ICMC is managing and coordinating it, but we also then have responsibility for one of the work streams of that project. It's a 2.5-year project on migration and decent work. So you'll hear more about that if you come to our special event. So now to go a little more specifically in the areas that ICMC directly implements. And sometimes I'm asked by people, why is ICMC directly implementing some programs? If you're a network, why doesn't we just leave this to the bishops' conferences? And I can't tell you how much the bishops' conferences, the religious orders, the dioceses, the parishes do in this area. You could tell us how much you do. And so in fully respecting that work, ICMC does get involved in some of very complicated, high-flow refugee situations, and also areas where we're collaborating with two of the more important, the UN Agency for Refugees and the UN Agency for Migrants, and also with some of the governments that want to partner with faith-based organizations like ICMC. It involves some large sums of financing, also very careful monitoring and reporting and accountability. And so we're not in any way taking away from what you do at the bishops' conferences and in the dioceses, in the parishes, but we hope we complement what you do and help you to be able to reach out to more people through the work that we do. Since the last council meeting in 2014, the ICMC operations have undergone very big changes, a very big expansion of our humanitarian activities across the globe. In response to the growing challenges and scale of forced displacement, the number of beneficiaries supported by ICMC programs annually has grown to an estimated 532,000 people across Africa, Middle East, Asia, Latin America, and Europe. At this time, the ICMC staff in the field has more than doubled since the last council meeting, and so we now have about 700 people, including our deployees, and I'll talk a little more about that program in a moment, our staff, direct staff in the humanitarian assistance programs, and volunteers working in 11 field offices with an operational presence in 40 countries. About 99% of the ICMC operational programs are funded by governments and institutional donors, mainly the United States of America, at least until the present time, and hopefully in the future, the European Union, UNHCR, and Canada. And so we hope that this will continue. At the same time, that small percentage, some of that comes from you, the donations that you share with us and other private fundraising that we do, which I'll talk about at the end of this report as well. Just to look at a few of the major operational program that we have right now. You saw in the historic video that in a way we've evolved according to where the major burden of migrants and refugees are in the world and how the church can best respond through ICMC and through all of you. But right now we have a very important presence responding to the Syrian emergency. In Syria, ICMC supported more than 140,000 beneficiaries, mostly internally displaced persons, and host community members in and around Damascus, and nearly 30,000 Iraqi refugees and other nationalities. And we do this with USA government funding. We also in Jordan, we assisted 81,000 Syrian refugees and nearly 30,000 needy Jordanians. We've incorporated a principle into our work in more recent years of making sure that we give major amounts of our attention and our resources to the refugees or the displaced people, but we also try to reach out to the needy people in those local host communities. And since Syria has become a protracted refugee crisis, it will become increasingly difficult to secure donor commitment to address long-term development needs in Jordan and other neighboring countries. We also need to think about the fact that we have to assist those people who want to stay in this area, especially we're concerned about the Christian presence in the Middle East, as some of you are as well, and assist those people who want to stay, both to rebuild their lives in areas that many of which have been destroyed, both the buildings as well as the social fabric, and also for those who want to go back to their home areas because they may have been displaced to other parts of their home country or to another country nearby. In partnership with the Friars Minor, the Order of Friars Minor, the Franciscan Friars, in Syria and in Lebanon, we have a special partnership that we've established. We know that we can never directly implement all of the programs that are needed, and we know they are already present, working with refugees in Lebanon, mainly from Syria, some from Iraq, and also in the Aleppo area of Syria itself with the displaced persons. We have major programming that we've done in Damascus, and so we've partnered with the Friars in Aleppo. And they've been working with some 250 needy families. We've been sharing with them some resources, small resources, but are used very well to help them with living expenses, housing expenses, and also opportunities for socialization. And now, just recently, we established another agreement with the Friars Minor to fund teachers' salaries and student activities in a partially destroyed school in the Aleppo area, the Anaya School. I want to thank the Pro Terra Santa Association. It's based in Milano, and it coordinates this work of the Friars Minor in these areas of great need. With two protection centers located in Mafraq and Irbid in Jordan, ICMC also is addressing the needs of particularly vulnerable groups, including women and girls, people with disabilities, the elderly, as well as trauma and the survivors of gender-based and sexual violence. With so many Syrian refugee children out of school, they are at great risk of becoming a lost generation. ICMC has been one of the few organizations in Jordan to implement a youth-specific project. And Walter talked about this already. I'll just repeat it because I think it's so important that we need to repeat it. It's called the Photo Voice Photography Project, where Syrian youth in Jordan are empowered to document and share their stories and experiences as adolescents in their communities. And please see the photo exhibit outside, and you'll see me also sharing smaller photos with our speakers to show our great gratitude to them. In Pakistan, during 2017 alone, ICMC assisted more than 139,000 refugees, mostly Afghans, but also there are Sudanese, there are Iranians, and others there as well. I visited there last summer, and it was a really privileged experience. It's always a privileged experience to visit our field offices and to get to know our staff and the refugees themselves. And there, too, we've had some beautiful work being done by the young people and also by artists in the refugee community and among the adults. And we had a beautiful event when I was there for them to share their work with each other. We also, I'm very grateful to our staff there. Many of the children cannot attend the government schools, and so the staff has taken on for themselves fundraising activities and partnerships with some of the private schools in Islamabad area so that they could have opportunities to continue their studies. Other areas that we're involved with there are protection, safe shelter, livelihood, water and sanitation, and then also serving the victims of sexual and gender-based violence. We have a shelter for them, which now is under threat of being closed because of ending of funding to the program. So we hope we find the ways to continue that work, that good work that's being done. In Malaysia, and I should say all of the directors of our staff programs, their field programs are here. And I've encouraged them to reach out to you, to have chats during the meal times, during the break times. And maybe I just ask you if you will stand up so people will be able to recognize you. So please, our field staff, great. Good, okay. Thank you very much, and please feel free to approach them. I think I lost the slides. Okay, sorry. So in Malaysia, ICMC continues and expands its services for Rohingya and other survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. We're actually located in the UNHCR compound there, and all of those cases that seem to be possible cases of this type are referred directly to us. And there we get involved in helping them with daily living tasks and expenses. We also have an excellent refugee protection corps. They're trained refugees themselves. They take care of the special hotline that we have, the telephone hotline. They accompany the refugees to medical appointments, to counseling appointments, and help them. And I have to say, I spoke with two of the men who are part of this. We used to be only women, but now we have a little more gender balance, and so we have two men who are part of that Refugee Protection Corps. And they shared with me how they changed their own attitudes and also their own family behavior because of their experience with so many of the women and children who have been abused and discriminated against because of cultural approaches that are not acceptable. So I think it's really an important way that we help men as well as women in this program. As progress with providing access to jobs and education remains slow, many of the refugees face great financial difficulties and protection risks, which continue to be the main triggers for abuse and negative coping mechanisms, including child marriage. So ICMC is trying to empower that local community of refugees to take those situations into their own hands and to be able to be sure that they could respond to each other through the Refugee Protection Corps and through the other areas of civil society in the refugee community. With regard to the Rohingya refugees, we know that we've had a huge influx from Myanmar, from the Rakhine State, into Bangladesh. And there, as we sat in Geneva and thought, what can we do? You know, we didn't feel that we needed to go and respond directly operationally because we knew that there was Caritas Bangladesh that had been given responsibility by the bishops to serve those refugees. And so we did a special fundraising appeal through our Boston office that fundraises in the United States. And we've been able to share a few resources. I hope they've been helpful. And I just wanted to note that Bishop Rosario, the president of Caritas Bangladesh, will speak in our last session on Thursday afternoon about this. And we hope that we can continue to share with you, Bishop. The resettlement activities. Again, a lot has been said about our resettlement activities in our historic film by Walter, by both Michelle and by Carol. So I won't spend a lot of time, but this really is a historical heart, and a present heart of ICMC. And so since 2014, ICMC assisted an average of more than 7,000 refugees annually to depart to the United States and to enable them to start a new life in safety and dignity. And Carol, I thought, really described that process very well, that there are many, many different actors in this process. Certainly, their cases need to be reviewed by UNHCR before they have official recognition as refugees. And even in that sense, ICMC is inside because our deployment program sometimes deploys staff members, legal and social experts to work within those offices to get get involved in those reviews of cases. Once they're recognized as refugees, then the especially vulnerable families are referred to in the Middle East, and Turkey are referred to our offices in Istanbul, which also do some work in Ankara, and then also in Beirut. And then we would help to process those applications for resettlement to the United States, extensive interviewing. Then we have the security, Homeland Security people from the United States government coming to review those cases. They don't come often enough anymore, and we hope that they will come more often because we have many cases waiting for resettlement. And then we also work on arranging the medical examinations for them so that their health could be established. And then we work with IOM to arrange their travel eventually. But before that, we also get involved in cultural orientation and education about their new life as refugees. I visited there, and you'll see me in the middle of a group of, I thought we were just going to have the young people, but all the parents decided to come for the photo as well. But I visited with the children especially. They too are being educated in cultural orientation. And they showed me drawings of the state to which they would go in the United States, and we're very proud to talk about their new life that they were looking forward to. Unfortunately, some of those very people now are not moving, and so I hope that this will change and that the United States, the country I was born in, from immigrant stock, will become once again the land of opportunities for people who are needy and especially vulnerable. And then the deployment program. This again has been mentioned already, but I just wanted to point out this very special work that we do, and that is that we recruit for short-term contracts, legal and social experts who then work within UNHCR offices and in collaboration with the governments as well to interview people, to help to recommend the determination of status for refugees. And also there's a very special work that they do with the children. UNHCR recommends that all refugee children should be reviewed for a best interest determination, special process of finding out what's the best interest for this child. And especially this is important for the unaccompanied minors. And so our experts are doing a lot of that, and we're getting more and more of a demand for that, and we're really pleased that governments and UNHCR are recognizing that. The same thing should be done for migrant children, especially unaccompanied, and I hope there will be more opportunities that we could perform that service. So you see that in 2017, we had 153 ICMC experts deployed as short-term auxiliary workforce, is how they're called, to 65 UNHCR duty stations in 44 countries. And they interview and assisted more than 67,000 refugees in Africa, Middle East, Asia, Latin America, and Europe. This is a way of helping UNHCR respond to these high-flow situations that it would take much more time if they didn't have our help. And many times those short-term contracts then are extended. And then also to just point out the special case of Greece, which is certainly seeing the arrival of many mixed flow, both migrants and refugees. And we know the visit of the Holy Father to Lesbos together with the ecumenical patriarch was a very important one. So we have now ICMC staff increased from 30 ICMC experts in 2014 to more than 160 experts at the end of 2017. And again, very much helping both UNHCR and the Greek government in the areas that I've mentioned already. So we're thankful to the staff, and we have a small staff in Geneva that works on this and gives a lot of support to these experts who work in very difficult circumstances and dangerous circumstances many times. In terms of advocacy, ICMC plays a key advocacy role related to refugee and migrant rights, migration and management, and refugee protection and assistance. And actually, Cardinal Parolin, I thought, gave an excellent summary of this, so I have less to do on this part, but it really is a major, major activity that we have. And in addition to advocating directly for ICMC and for our tradition as a Catholic Church organization, we also, as Cardinal Parolin mentioned, coordinate civil society in major processes. Since 2011, we've been doing that on the Global Forum for Migration and Development, and more recently, we've done it in leading up to the Summit on Migrants and Refugees held in the UN headquarters in New York in September of 2016, and now we're doing a similar task for the lead up to the Compact for Migration. And we work together with ICFA, the International Council of Voluntary Agencies, as well as with the UN Committee on Migration in New York. We help to coordinate that civil society work. ICFA concentrates more on the Compact for Refugees with our partnership, but we concentrate more on the Compact for migrants. And now, as we face that, and especially in view of the 20 points that we helped to formulate with the Vatican's office, we might want to put emphasis on child detention, on migrants with vulnerabilities and specific needs, migrant worker rights, legal standards, legal pathways, and dignified returns, and the role of faith-based organizations in this. We already have mention of faith-based organizations in the draft compact on refugees. We hope that will be also included in the compact on migrants. I don't know if Michelle is still here, but hint that to her if you see her, because we know how much a role the faith-based organizations play in this area. In the area for migration and development, the Global Forum, we've coordinated the global civil society contribution with at least 200 civil society organizations represented to that important intergovernmental process. And each time they meet, which is annually, at least in recent times, we also have a civil society day and one day that's joint government and civil society. So it's an important area. Just like we had the 20 points from the Vatican and from Catholic organizations, they came together after the summit on migration, migrants and refugees, and they adopted a document called Now and How, 10 Acts for Global Compacts. And it's focusing mainly on the Migration Compact, and you could find that on our website, and so I recommend that. There's some similarities with the 20 points as well. We have a special structure in Europe, ICMC Europe, that has been responding to the changing global and European context. Since 2012, ICMC Europe and partners had developed and led the SHARE network, a platform currently gathering about 1,200 actors, both municipalities, NGOs, governments, they have also a great deal of partnership with the diaspora organizations, the groups of migrants in different countries in Europe, parishes, universities in 28 countries, European countries. They work together to promote the protection and integration of refugees in Europe, developing and disseminating good practices in planning refugee reception, housing, volunteering in European municipalities, and integration within the community. They also have as major partners UNHCR and IOM in the context of the European Resettlement Network. ICMC Europe advocates and does reports that call for international community to provide places for 400,000 Syrian refugees. Europe has not come up to that number, but we hope that they will continue to work toward that goal. And we have, again, both the president of ICMC Europe board and our staff member, our director of that office here. So again, get to know them them during these days together. Also, I just mentioned that in September of last year, the ICMC Europe brought together a group of FBOs, governments, and other civil authorities to look at the role of faith-based organizations in providing private sponsorships for refugees in order to, again, accomplish the safe resettlement and integration that was mentioned by the Cardinal. Another area that ICMC Europe has been engaged on is the MAID program, Migration and Development Africa program. This is a special partnership of European organizations with coordination from ICMC Europe to work with African groups in the Center for Migration Studies of the University of Ghana, the African Foundation for Development, and the Forum des Organisations de Solidarité Internationale Issue des Migrations Forum, and they're concentrating for ICMC's part on Senegal, Guinea, and then Sierra Leone and Ghana. So we're really happy to be able to be part of this. I know that we're also working with civil society organizations in Turkey as well to strengthen the civil society responses in Turkey. Communications, and I'm sorry for rushing through this, but I wanted to leave enough time and finish in time. We've done a lot of new work in the air communications area, and I'm really pleased that we can do that. And you've seen Juan, who's now taking some video. He's our new communications director. We were able to put up a new mobile phone-friendly website. It was launched in late 2015. And just to remind you, our website is www.icmc.net. And we also sponsored a one-day campaign launched to mark World Refugee Day 2017, where we heard the voices of child refugees in Jordan. And we'll hear those from time to time during these sessions these days. And then we also have tried to feature much more the work of you, the Episcopal conferences and other Catholic organizations on our website. But please share with us. Father, who's working with the bishops of France, please share that document with us. We really would like to see that. We don't always get that information, but we will make sure we spread that among others as well. And you'll see our website. Before you complain to me, I'll complain to you, is very English heavy. So we want to have more in the other two official languages, at least in French and in Spanish. And if we receive in other languages, we will share. We won't always be able to translate, but we will share the information that you give us. Just to give you a few data about our communications, we now have 3,500 Twitter followers, nothing like the Pope's following, but we're getting there. And then I have in my own Twitter account 1,000. I had a Twitter account for 9 years that I never used. When I got to ICMC, we started using it, and already, there are 1,000 followers. LinkedIn, 2,800 followers, and in Facebook, 5,100 followers. YouTube, 100. Newsletter and email list, 2,000. And then our website visitors are an average of 5,500 visitors per month. So please use these resources and share with us and put us into your Facebook and into your Twitter accounts and other social media. We're really trying to strengthen our work in social media. We have an office, a liaison office in Washington, D.C., and I really want to say thank you to Bill Canny and the Migration and Refugee Services Department of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. They offer us very generously hospitality within their office complex, and so we're grateful for that. And our staff member there also works very closely with the staff members of the Migration and Refugee Services, which is the largest resettlement agency in the United States. So about 25% of all of the refugees arriving in the United States are resettled through the diocesan offices associated with MRS. This work really serves as a liaison to the current U.S. government-funded programs and tries to identify new funding opportunities through the U.S. government. It also helps to position ICMC to effectively advocate on behalf of vulnerable refugees with U.S. government policymakers, and we do that very much in partnership with the Migration and Refugee Services Office of the Bishops' Conference. We have assisted recently together with MRS on an anti-human trafficking proposal there's funding available from the U.S. government in the Antilles, and we're planning to work with Caritas Antilles if we receive that funding. We're still anxiously awaiting an answer of that. And then we also are involved in a much wider program, especially in Asia, of anti-human trafficking for those engaged in the fishing industry. And again, MRS plays an important role in that, together with the Apostleship of the Sea, the chaplaincies for fisher people and sailors in many places of the world. Fundraising among the Episcopal conferences, other partners, and private donors. First of all, this funding helps us to support the government and multilateral funded programs that we have that sometimes require a copay, or some of the funding might end, or it may not be enough to run the program. It also helps us to maintain very high standard management, accountability programs and administration within our General Secretariat and with our field offices as well. We're very grateful to the member Episcopal conferences that respond positively to our annual appeal for donations, and we hope that more of you will respond to this. And actually, while we've been here, we've received some donations already. You brought with you, or you made a bank transfer, so we want to thank the Bishops' Conference of Spain, of Germany, Thailand, and Korea for their support, even just while we are here. But many of you have supported us in our annual appeals, and we hope you will continue to do that. We also have an ICMC Inc. It's a separate corporation in the United States with a separate board. It's based in Boston, Massachusetts, and we have two of the staff people here. And again, maybe Lucy and Danielle, you could stand up as well, just so that they know you, and you could please socialize and hear about and give them information. We really need information about the work that you're doing in the field, and what ICMC does directly in the field as well. We also receive some support from the Vatican offices and from Catholic foundations. In Boston, the program in Boston, it's supported by some 17,000 donors who respond mainly to postal campaigns, 7,000 of whom are regular donors. And the staff regularly prepares appeals to them, and then also acknowledges the gifts that we receive. We also recently added, and Danielle is in this position, a major gifts officer to be able to leverage higher funding from some of our regular donors who may have the capacity to give more, and we're happy to give them that opportunity, but also from new donors who may have a capacity to give large gifts as well. And then recently we just established a partnership with a Catholic parish in Geneva to cultivate special support for a project in the Gitega Archdiocese of Burundi. And Archbishop Simon is on our governing committee. He's the Archbishop of Gitega, so we're happy that we could join with this parish that's trying to support a project in your diocese, Archbishop. That's about it that I have, but I do want to mention that just this morning we received from Cardinal Parolin the nihil obstat for 3 candidates for president. We have not been able to share that information with you because we were awaiting the response of the Secretariat of State. All candidates for president and for Secretary General need to be approved by the Secretariat of State before we could present them as candidates. And so I just wanted to tell you who they are and tell you how to get the biographical material for them. I know that some of you will want to speak about this in your regional convenings this afternoon. So, and Fred is giving me a time signal, yes. So there are 3 candidates. I'll tell you their names. And then for their bios, if you go back up to the reception area where you registered, we'll have their bios available in English, French, and Spanish. So just check with the staff and the volunteers up there so that you could get a copy of those bios. Sorry, we couldn't put it in the packets, but it was just this morning. When we work with the Vatican, which thinks in terms of millennia rather than quick turnarounds, we have to be patient. So 3 of the candidates. Dr. Anne Gallagher, who's from Australia. She's an international expert in law and especially on migration, human rights, administration of criminal justice, and a distinguished expert on anti-human trafficking. We have Her Excellency Dr. Anne Leahy, who's the former ambassador of Canada to the Holy See, and she has a long, distinguished career in diplomacy for Canada, including being the former ambassador to the Great Lakes region in Africa. And then the final candidate is His Excellency Martin Woolmeebe. He's the former ambassador of Nigeria to Switzerland and to the UN in Geneva. He also served as the president of the Human Rights Council, and he served as the UN Undersecretary General for Darfur, and also served as the Director General of the Foreign Ministry in Nigeria. So these are 3 candidates. You'll have a full bio for them, and then tomorrow we will have show you video presentations that they did of themselves and some of their thoughts about leadership of ICMC as president. So I will stop there. Fred gave me the signal already, and he's also telling me one more announcement that I have to give you, and that is that right after this session, we'd like to do a group photo outside of this room. So just go out to that area near the coffee. You had coffee, and the staff and the volunteers will show you where to go. I want to thank you. I'm sorry this was so rushed, but certainly I am here and the staff is here to answer any questions or have any discussion you would like to have. Thank you very much.